Welcome to Simply Debbie Sue's Southern Whispers. This is the month of November, and it's the month of Thanksgiving. So I prepared some stories this month that I hope will warm your heart. So let's get right into the introduction of this story. In the quiet corners of the South, where the land speaks and whispers, and the sky stretches wide with memory, stories rise with morning mist. Some are passed down through hymns and hand-me-downs. Others arrive unexpectedly, folded in envelopes, sealed with honey, and carried by the wind. The Harvest Letter is one such tale. It begins with a young girl named Clara June Weatherford, whose faith is stitched into every word she writes. In a season of drought and doubt, Clara June sends a letter to God, not asking, but thanking. What happens next is a reminder that even in the leanest harvest, grace still grows. This story is for anyone who's ever whispered a prayer in the wind and believed it might land in the hands of someone who needs it most. This story is called The Harvest Letter. Clara June Weatherford had a habit of writing letters to God, not just prayers, but full-on letters, folded, sealed, and sent off into the wind like dandelion wishes. Her mama said God heard every word, but Clara June figured he might appreciate a little Southern hospitality in the form of honey-sealed envelopes with hand-drawn hearts. That November, the fields around Willow Creek were brittle and brown. The harvest had come up short, and so had the town's spirits. Clara June, sensing the heaviness in her mama's eyes and the quiet in her daddy's voice, wrote a letter full of thanks anyway. Dear Lord, she wrote, thank you for the wheat that grew even when the rain didn't, for Mama's laugh, for warm socks, for the way the prairie sings when I'm sad. Please send this to someone who needs it more than me. She let the letter go on a Tuesday morning, standing barefoot in the frost-kissed grass. The wind called it like it had been waiting. 3 days later, a stranger arrived in town. He wore a coat too thin for the weather and carried a satchel that looked older than the church pews. He didn't say much, just wandered into the general store and asked if there was work. Miss Lottie, who ran the counter, gave him a broom and a sandwich. That night, at the town's Thanksgiving supper, the stranger showed up again, this time with Clara June's letter in hand. I found this near the tracks, he said softly, handing it to Pastor Jim. It reminded me of things I'd forgotten to be thankful for. Pastor Jim read the letter aloud, and the town barn fell silent. Clara June's mama clutched her chest. Her daddy wiped his eyes. And the stranger, whose name turned out to be Eli, stayed for pie and prayer. Over the next few weeks, Eli mended fences, stacked firewood, and fixed a church roof. He never asked for much, just smiled and said, I reckon I owe this town a little kindness. One Sunday, Clara June found a note tucked into her Bible. Thank you for your letter. It found me when I was lost. You reminded me that even in the dry seasons, God still plants hope. But the story didn't end there. That winter, Eli stayed on. He became part of the rhythm of Willow Creek, quiet, steady, and kind. He taught Clara June how to whittle a bird from a block of cedar. He helped Mama build a new pantry shelf. And when the spring thaw came, he planted a row of sunflowers behind the church, saying, Hope ought to bloom where the folks gather. Clara June kept writing letters. Some she sent into the wind. Others she tucked into hymnals, lunch baskets, and coat pockets, little notes of thanks and encouragement. Folks started calling them prayer blessings, and before long, the whole town was writing them too. By the next harvest, Willow Creek had changed, not just in crops, but in spirit. And every Thanksgiving, Pastor Jim read one of Clara June's letters aloud, reminding everyone that sometimes the smallest act of faith becomes the biggest harvest of all. So the reflection of this story is, Clara June's letter didn't change the weather, it didn't fill the silos or mend the broken places overnight, but it did something deeper. It reminded a weary soul that gratitude is a kind of seed, and when planted with faith, it blooms in the most unexpected places. In Willow Creek, the harvest was more than wheat. It was kindness shared, fences mended, and strangers welcomed. It was a little girl's words becoming a town's rival, And isn't that the way God works? Quietly, faithfully, through the smallest gestures that ripple into grace. So whether you're in a season of plenty or walking through a field of dry soil, may you remember Clara June's letter. May you write your own. And may you trust that somewhere the wind is carrying your hope to someone who needs it. I hope you enjoyed our first letter of November. Come back next week for another one. And thank you for listening.